Franklin County Commissioners meeting, October 4th, 2017.
Morning, it is 9 o'clock. We're here for a regular Wednesday, October 4th board meeting, and we have a full complement of commissioners this morning. And Keith, the administrator, Karen, their clerk, and we do have some staff in the audience this morning. So join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Looks like our first item on is an inter-budget transfer. Dan, can you?
Yeah, this is for part-time help. That line is been exhausted, and so I propose to move some money out of the autopsy budget. We've got $14,000 balance in there, and I don't see that we're going to spend all of that for autopsies between now and the end of the year. And so I'd like to move $5,000 out of that into the part-time help.
So what happens if you do?
Well, then I have to come back and ask for money in that.
Yeah, that's a problem I have. Because autopsies is, where are you going to get the money to cover autopsies if it goes over, I guess is what I'm getting.
Well, and what I'm saying, based on prior experience, I don't see us doing $14,000 on autopsies in the next 3 months.
How many autopsies have you done?
Well, we usually average about 20% of the caseload, and so it runs about 20 to 25 a year.
20 to 25. And what did you budget for?
In autopsies,
Yeah.
we had budgeted for $32,000.
Which is how many autopsies?
Well, I don't know. They're 2,500 a piece average.
Okay.
So
about 6.
I didn't pull that number, so I can't tell you how many we've done so far.
So what's the reason for the part-time help, the increase?
Because we had 8,000 in that, and we've exhausted that amount.
And that's the third part-time you have.
Yes.
And you need that now, not for the beginning of next year. This is now. You exhausted
Yes.
it now. Okay.
And the reason now is because there's some conferences coming up, Wausau, and the coroners were successful in getting the case management system funded through the state, and I've been using that for 3 years, and so I'm the trainer for the eastern part of the state.
Mm-hmm.
Who pays those costs when you go to do that training?
The Coroners Association.
Is your need for additional part-time help a result of you being gone to do this training?
No.
If you weren't doing this training, would you need less part-time help?
No.
Then why do you need more part-time help?
Because we have not had an additional person since I started back in 1992, and our caseload has more than doubled since then.
So remind me how many full and part-time FTEs you have.
I have 2 full-time, and then I had, for the last 3 years, I've had a part-time person.
And that part-time this year and last year, do you know, have they been 0.5, 20%, 80% of a full-time?
I would, closer to 80%.
Okay. Keith, has HR looked at other comparable size county staffing comparisons?
I don't know off the top of my head. Carly, I'm going to defer that question to you. Have you looked at comparable size staff in coroner's offices with other counties?
I have not myself.
See, there's several interconnected issues here. I think, not to speak for Commissioner Cook, but he and I both over the years have spoken out about moving money between lines and how it has a tendency to intentionally or otherwise, we'll assume unintentionally, hide staffing shortfalls and excesses, and same with budgets. It's really hard to keep track when you're moving this around. At this point, for a county our size, I don't know if 2.8 FTEs is reasonable or not. My instinct is it probably is, but I don't really know. The autopsies are must-pays. Keith, have you looked at the expenditures in the autopsy line over the last 2-3 years to see what the trend has been? Because clearly, if you're going to move money out of one budget, you need to know what the history is so that you know what the risk is that you're imparting by taking money out of there.
Yeah. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but
Maybe Dan knows.
Um,
Do you know how much you spent on autopsies the last 2-3 years?
It's been between 17 to 20,000.
And how many autopsies you have up to date?
That I can't tell you. I didn't pull those numbers up to date.
Because in the budget's 35,000.
Yes. I can tell you how much it's been spent.
32.
I guess it begs the question, why was this budgeted at 32 when the history has been 17 to 20?
Well, because that line kept running out of money when we had it budgeted at 17.
Okay, I get that. I wasn't questioning the increase, I was questioning the 32. Because I can recall on at least one occasion you coming before the board and saying, essentially, fine, don't fund this travel, I'll just take it out of autopsy, and when I run out of money there, you'll be forced by state law to fund it. So I'm sensitive to what that number is and why. Just to be candid.
Year to date, we spent $14,359. And we've been reimbursed year to date $9,414.
So that's 2017 year to date. Keith, do you have numbers for 15 or 16? Does anybody?
I could get them, but I don't have them here. I just have current year.
If you got the current, what does the rest of the budget look like for 17?
Are you asking me or Dan? I'm sorry.
Well, I asked you yesterday to pull those numbers.
And I did. Office and operating supplies, their budget was $4,125. They exceeded that by $221. Their small tools and equipment was budgeted at $1,000. They're $56 over. And then cell phones, travel, copier, they're all under budget by $500, $600, $700. And repairs and maintenance on their vehicle, they have about a $340 balance. Dues and subscriptions, about a $740 balance. So,
and then they spent $1,181 on the inquest that was not budgeted. So overall, their working budget is $51,787, and they spent $32,419. So they're
What was that number again, those two numbers?
they 51,787 was their non-personnel budget, and they spent out of that 32,419, leaving them with a balance of $19,368.
And of course, Keith, what does the personnel line look like?
Personnel line, they have spent $149,000 out of $193,000, leaving them with a balance of $44,000.
Have you annualized that? We're running it out by month so that we know. Looks like that's 16.55 a month. We got 3 months left. Yeah,
It's $5,000.
4.9 looks like. Excuse me. That's assuming a rate of part-time usage that's equivalent to what they've been doing thus far.
Correct.
All right. Which brings me back to my original question, which is implied, is our use of part-time help appropriate? Is it excessive? And the way we know that is to look at comparable counties. If we find out that comparable counties do just fine on 2 FTEs, then our use of overtime is excessive, and we probably need to cut back on our absences that result in more part-time help. If it turns out that the FTE count in comparable sized counties is, say, 3, then there's a reasonable argument for approving the funding.
Right.
That's why the staffing is key. My interest is to do what's best for the people of Franklin County, because it's their money, and to do what is fair to all of the departments, including the coroner's office. And to do that, I feel like I need to know the answer to this staffing information.
We can certainly get that information and bring the item back next week.
And I can tell you that because I've done it, not that you believe me all the time, but those comparable counties do have 3 full FTEs.
And those comparable counties would be?
Grant, Cowlitz, Lewis.
Okay, there's 3. Carly, how hard is it to get that data?
Not difficult.
Is it, not to push, but is it something you could go down to your office and check on, or does it require phone calls and time?
It would probably require some phone calls,
Okay.
just to make sure that we understand, okay, so we're looking at budget data,
Right.
but certainly something I could have by next week.
Okay. Well, I've already stated what my first position is with respect to reasonable staffing for an office and how that affects this funding question. The other piece is how we track our money, and moving it between must-pay lines and personnel lines is not, in my opinion, good budgeting practice, because you lose track. I would much rather see us overrun a budget line and have that documented, as Commissioner Cook has educated me over the years as to the value of doing that. So those are my 2 thoughts.
Get some answers and bring it back then. Got enough time, Dan?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That brings us to public comment. Seeing only staff in the boardroom today, we'll go on to paying the bills.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we have two sets of warrants for payment this morning. The first is fund expenditures. I move for approval of fund expenditures in the total amount of $231,625.86. As presented, note that this has been reviewed and signed off by two representatives of the auditor's office and also has been reviewed by the county administrator.
Second. All in favor?
And next we have salary clearing payroll and emergency management payroll. Move for approval of those warrants in the total amount of $975,367.30. And note that this too has been reviewed by two representatives of the auditor's office.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye. And Mr. Chairman, just ask for a moment to review the consent agenda before we move on. I know we've all looked at them multiple times already. Okay, Mr. Chairman, move for approval of the consent agenda with 10 items as presented. Would appreciate some discussion.
Second.
Discussion.
Keith, not that it gives me concern about approving or voting to approve these, but I am curious on the defense contracts. I don't think we need to get into a lot of detail. I'm just looking for a head nod that, yeah, we understand that things are changing here, but we feel like we've got a handle on it, and there's not a crisis. We've got tools to adjust and add and delete contracts.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Had some turnover and changes there, but Larry's done a good job of keeping that budget under control, so I think we're
Okay.
good.
Yeah, and that's been my impression. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something. On item 9, the corrections interagency contract, just wanted to note that that has a couple of nice provisions in the termination clause. One, that either party can terminate for convenience with, I think it's 90 days notice, which is reasonable because you have time to move offenders to other facilities. But it also allows, if the state doesn't get budget funds to pay us, then they can step out of it. But what I really wanted to highlight is that we built a new jail. It was expensive, and at least from what I'm seeing, every indication is that Commander Soltemeier and the sheriff are doing a nice job of bringing in, let's call them additional clients at state expense, and that revenue certainly helps when that's an expensive part of our budget. So appreciate that. That's all I got.
Commissioner Miller, any?
No, I have no questions.
Has been moved and seconded for the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let's go ahead and take a few minutes to sign these, as long as we're so far ahead this morning. It looks like the other two are done. Go ahead, Keith. I can plug away at these.
First item I have for your consideration is a resolution. It's number 2017-306. What this resolution proposes to do is to recognize current operations within the Commissioner's Office and County Administration from an organizational chart perspective. The last resolution that established that org chart was done in 2007. We recognize that the county no longer has a print shop. We have since created an office of public defense, so we needed to make some changes. We've also restructured how we manage the track and RV park, and so this resolution is intended to reflect those current changes as well as provide some clarity within the front office as to reporting relationships, supervisory relationships. So I wanted to bring this before you today for your consideration and approval. Happy to answer any questions you got about it.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know about anybody else. I don't have any questions. I think County Administrator did a nice job of hearing the various concerns surrounding the need to update that chart, and I've reviewed the chart. Looks good to me. And with that, I'd be happy to move for approval of Resolution 2017-306, and of course, subject to discussion and questions.
You know, second, and just want to state that I have to think that this is one of these organizations charts we've had for so many years. It is great to update it, and thanks to Mr. Cook, because I know he kept pushing for that, and I think it was time to do it, and I like how it looked, so I have no questions either.
And I think after 10 years, it was time to clean up anyway, and to eliminate some of the changes we've made over the years. So thanks for your and Carly's work on this. And have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next item was not early on your agenda, but it's just a letter. We received a request from the City of Connell asking for a letter of support for their rail interchange project that they are working on. I think you're familiar with the project and what's being done there. We had a very extensive discussion of the project when we were considering providing some .09 funds to assist them in their financing what needs to be done. And they are looking for additional grant money, and so they're asking for the various organizations that are involved to provide a letter of support. And so this letter reflects that intent.
So, Mr. Chairman, I've reviewed the letter. I think it's well written. Especially appreciate the key points that were brought out, that the county has supported it by adding it to our economic development fund, and that while it may appear that it primarily benefits Franklin County and City of Connell, it also brings out the important point that this increases and improves the efficiency and availability of agricultural commerce throughout the region, in fact throughout the world, since our products go to Asia and elsewhere. And that was nice the way that letter evolved and got all those points. So I don't know if you wrote that, but it's well done. Happy to have already signed it. So I guess for formalities, I'd move for board approval and consent to sign that letter as requested.
I'll second that.
And that's all in favor?
Aye.
And that's something that is needed up in the Connell area, the way the rail traffic works. We have two at grade crossings there, and a major part of the community is on the east side of the tracks. The high school, or all of the schools, are on the west side now, and foot traffic and so on. And of course, over the course of our last mayor, that they've turned off they've made it illegal for the railroad to use the horns coming through Connell, which, when you got two sets of tracks there, it makes it, if there's a train stopped and they don't use the horns, the kids will walk behind the stop train, well, they don't know if there's another one coming, so this will all help if it comes to fruition, so, thanks, I do support this letter also.
So did you write the letter?
I did.
Good letter.
Good job. So, all right, with that, Keith, you're...
That's all the way in the way of official business. Not as a matter of discussion at this point, but we've received some additional information from K&B Architects regarding the proposed modifications in the jail. I'd like to schedule some time with each commissioner individually and with representatives from the Sheriff's Corrections Office to kind of go over those proposals. Obviously, those are significant financial impacts before we make commitments or decisions. I want the board to be fully briefed on what's being suggested, and so I'll be in touch with each of you to schedule some time to visit about that. Other than that, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioners?
I was going to say it's time for public comment, but I guess you saw it.
Yeah.
I have an issue I'd like to bring up. I know Commissioner Peck brought this up a couple months ago, and I've seen nothing happen since then, and kind of wondering what next move would be. But I went up to September 26th, Kittitas County, and they're working on the matter of adopting collective bargaining transparency. And I stood up there, and I understand you got a phone call also from Freedom Foundation. And after listening to that, I didn't see there being any problem. I remember you discussing this and wanted to be able to put this on the agenda about November, first week of November, when the commissioners are all together again and have a discussion in open public. But if it's on the agenda, because these things I want to handle transparency. I want people to know that this is a discussion. They can come and talk about these things, whether it's the union side or the transparency side. And I do think that it is good for us to be transparent. And when it comes to bargaining, just asking for the doors to be open, which means if there's any detailed thing, they can go ahead and go into executive session. So it's not like everything's going to be wide open. I mean, there's different ways of doing this, and just listening to those guys. They're probably going to pass it when I talk to the commissioners. And Benton County is also looking at it. They went through this here a couple weeks ago, and I think they're looking at tending and passing it. And Lincoln County has passed it and have been going through the lawsuits, or not lawsuits, but disagreement with PERC, which has dismissed twice the fact that they're in the wrong suit here, and that PERC is, just kept trying to attack it and saying this isn't right, legally right, but it is. And from everything we've read, and I just think this is something we could bring out on the agenda and maybe have a discussion on.
Mr. Chairman, following up on that, Mr. Miller is correct. I did bring this up several months ago, and in fact recommended that the board adopt the open bargaining. Had we done so, we would have been the first county in the state to do so. And sometimes being first isn't always best, because you get to enjoy all the unintended consequences. And so I was not altogether upset that the board decided to let some other county go first and suffer those slings and arrows, which there have been a couple of claims filed with the state, I believe with PERC. PERC didn't file them. It was other entities that filed them through PERC. And my understanding is that one of those has been cleared, but one is still pending, but my information might be a little dated. Also want to note that when I first brought this up, sought some feedback from our contractor, Mr. Wesley, who currently does a lot of these negotiations for us, and it was very clear. You can draw your own thoughts, conclusions, assertions, whatever, about where he might fall on this and why, but Mr. Wesley strongly advised against it, and I'm certainly open to having an open discussion of this, and I'm happy to hear that at least one other commissioner at this point is similarly inclined. I think this is the way of the future, frankly.
Yeah, I would agree. I do not recall any statement of pushing this further, but I'm glad that we are, if we can look at this, because I do think this, as you said, is probably the way it's going. Counties are starting to snowball on this effect. Just to have open government, just to have it where they can actually discuss these issues in public, and instead of knowing why does all of a sudden these things come out with 2 weeks of additional, or a week of additional vacation, and how does that happen? And then also in the ranking of unions, it's the lower people do get more disadvantaged. In this way, they can come in here instead of everything being behind doors, because that's what, as a county, we try to do, is be transparent. And I think this is just one step that would help this also. Now, the one problem I have seen by running into this, we do have bi-county unions. And bi-county unions, there's a few of them we have to work with, but if Benton County is going the direction, that would not be a problem if we also go with them on those unions. So if we could schedule it on the agenda here in the 1st of November, I think would be probably about the best time.
November 1st or November 8th.
November 8th? First, how about right away? It's just agenda items first.
Karen, what is the first Tuesday in November?
First Tuesday in November is the 7th.
Thank you. I don't have a particular date that this needs to happen. The 1st, the 8th?
Better than the 1st.
Are you suggesting election day?
I was just curious as to when it was, where it fell in the calendar.
Tuesday, 7th.
I don't think it impacts when we have this discussion, but no, I would favor probably doing it on the 1st, but I'm happy to do it on the 8th as well.
I think it's good on the 1st, because if there's further action, we can do other things following in meetings such as ordinance.
30 and 31 blacktop for.
Here in October.
Correct.
That is our budget workshop. These 2 days are our budget
okay.
workshop. We will not have it on the 15th because of WASAC. We will not have a meeting. And on the 20th, we will have our regular meeting instead of the 22nd.
Other thing to consider is agendas. Historically, we've moved our meeting the week of Thanksgiving, backed it up to Monday so as not to conflict with holiday schedules. And those tend to be fairly light agendas. But now that I think about it, that might not be a good time to get a lot of public participation either, because people will be traveling, so disregard. Just stay with the 1st.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if we're ready to move on, I just wanted to note that I attended the swearing-in ceremony for our newest Superior Court judge, Mr. Swanberg, now Judge Swanberg. Nice event, well attended in the courtroom 2, the historic one upstairs right above us. Packed house, a lot of notables, judges from all over the region, including the appeals court up in Spokane, the Federal Eastern District of Washington judges, retired judges, very good turnout. Former Congressman Hastings was there, and it was a good event. So you have a new Superior Court judge that we may be seeing in the boardroom in the future.
I couldn't attend that. I would like to have. I think that's an honor to have that done here in Franklin County. The last one I did attend was in Benton County, and of course my wife just had surgery, so it was a tough time for me there. But I was glad to see that we had a commissioner that went, and thank you, Commissioner Pat.
Anything further?
Just for Keith, looking forward to seeing the data on the coroner staffing so that we can make a fair and reasoned decision about this budget request. But if in fact we do fund additional staff time, I'd like us to look at a mechanism that reflects an overrun in that line so that we can catch it during the budget discussion. And also for the upcoming budget, we went from an average of 17 to 20,000 a year budget for autopsies to this year 32,000, and I'm unable to explain why we would make such a radical increase in that. I have some suspicions about how that might have happened, but since they're just suspicions, I'll leave it there.
I don't recall off the top of my head that big of a change, so I
Yep.
had the same question.
Okay.
Commissioner?
Just thinking about transparency. I've been hearing some comments out there about being able to put our meetings on podcasts so people can listen to them in the public. And it was one or two people, now I'm hearing a few more mention, why don't we do it where they get access to minutes, where they don't do them a good service at hearing what's going on. So, I know I talked with Keith here not too long ago, and with I asked if they could do that very simply and very cheap. Not much expense into it at all.
We've actually been testing the product. It's difficult to get a good recording of the meeting unless everyone who's participating in the meeting is speaking quite directly into their microphone. These microphones are very sensitive. They pick up a lot of background noise, and we're trying to figure out how to filter that so that you can actually listen to it when you listen to a recorded version. We considered looking into streaming it, similar to what City of Pasco does, but we found that technology is pretty expensive, and we don't currently have the capability to do video, but we can record and make available the recordings. But the sound quality right now is not what we would like it to be, so we're kind of wrestling with that.
One more issue I was going to bring up, if that's okay. You guys done with that?
Perhaps before we leave that topic, we've had conversations in the past about, you use the term streaming, providing a video feed to the local charter cable so that people can watch the meetings. I have supported that idea in the past, and I continue to support it. I'm also open to the idea, recognizing that there are some hurdles. I'm also open to the idea of doing evening meetings so that people in the local community are able to attend. I have some suspicion that we probably wouldn't get a large public participation, but then you don't know until you try. One of the big hurdles is that our budgets for security are tied to keeping this courthouse open certain hours, and if you go to an evening schedule, you've just added a significant cost increase, so those things have to be weighed out. But just for future discussion, I'm not particularly dissatisfied with the current process, but I'm certainly open to video and putting it on cable and or having evening meetings, whatever the board might decide.
Charter won't work for North County. It doesn't reach there.
That was the problem. Well,
We're also having to address the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, with respect to anything we broadcast having closed captioning on it. That's an additional technology requirement that we don't currently have the ability to do very easily.
I remember it's a pretty costly process for City of Pasco to convert, as I remember.
Well, we could do the podcast. I think that's good. Anybody who wants to listen to it can review it anytime, and they could, and it's reasonably cost. But I do understand the microphone factor. Maybe that's something we should try and see how that comes out. I know you're working on it, so.
Test version I listened to was hardly, it was very difficult to listen to because of the background, white noise and distraction.
Perhaps these microphones can be replaced with something very directional.
Okay.
Okay, one more item, and I talked to Public Works Manager about this, and that is the Hollingsworth Road. And I did mention, and I just want to mention it again, that there was an accident. I was sitting at the subway, and some guy told me they had an accident there. They didn't report it. And I just want to make sure that we get that taken care of, that corner. It's probably going to be down in a month. He can top it. He can do whatever he needs just for that safety. But I've driven that, and it is tough to see. Now, maybe something's happened lately. And did you get a chance to look at it yet? Because this is just yesterday morning we talked.
Where specifically are we talking about?
Around the corner on Hollingsworth, and there's two traffics coming where the corner is.
What's the intersection?
Hollingsworth, and it's a curve. It's that whole road.
That's the intersection with Chestnut. So it'd be Chestnut, and then it also heads north or south and turns into Walluke.
But is that before Chestnut, that corner there where where the problem is? Chestnut's that intersection.
Yeah.
And we got the curve, so I don't know if that's considered Chestnut. Is it still?
No, Hollingsworth is the through route currently, and that's the curve. And the landowner there, where he plants his corn in that area, is actually outside the county right away. So if it continues to be a concern, then I think we have to look at other options. And those may be acquiring additional right-of-way or changing that intersection completely. Because right now he's in that curve, he's on his own property.
And we're talking about the northwest corner of the intersection?
Northeast.
Of that intersection, it'd be the northwest.
Okay, the intersection, yeah, you call that Chestnut still.
It's right there in that curve.
Yeah. I thought last time I was out there, the corn was quite a ways back.
Correct.
Unless you're talking a little ways up Hollingsworth, north on Hollingsworth.
When you come in Hollingsworth and you're going south,
Yes.
when you come up and another car comes, there could be a heck of a collision. I was worried to go.
Yeah,
further.
in that curve on the tangent sections, he has definitely got corn inside the right of way. They don't create any sort of vision issue. It's in that curve, which to some people could cause kind of a tunneling effect, but in the curve, he is actually planted beyond county right of way. He is on his own property there, so.
Right. Last time I was out there, it looked like it was quite a ways
Correct.
back, away from the curve, from the roadbed.
Yes.
Here's the situation. As you're going south and that curve comes in, that's where the collision can be. So it's not really that intersection. It's right around as you come to that corner. And these people had the same situation. I've heard of another incident.
Yes.
That was a close call. This one, actually, somebody went out the road and they skimmed side of the vehicle, and he said he'd make a statement. Asked not to me.
Somebody was out of lane then.
Well, that's right, because there's a yield requirement there.
Or when you pull out, there could be some kind of collision too, as you pull out. But people do.
That's a curve. It's not, nobody's pulling out on that curve.
No. When you've got the intersection, you're going south, and there's that corn as it curves, and here's the situation right at the Y there. From the corn to there, that's the situation. If you're going to Hollingsworth to come here, and you're going to go straight, you're going to keep going south, right here's this situation. Because these guys are coming around on that outside left lane, or right lane, and that's where the collisions are. That's a problem.
I'm not following your drawings at all.
Well, let's do it again. Okay, here. There's Hollingsworth, there's Chestnut intersection right here they're talking about. And it's Walluke, actually. It's Walluke and Hollingsworth where they meet. If you're going to go straight on Walluke this way, if I got the right left and right, it could be this way, I don't know which one's north.
North is up.
Okay, so if you come this way, right here is the intersection, right by the W is where a problem could be, because the corner is not, it's back up to here.
I can't see where anything would help that.
Who has the right of way at the intersection?
Mow back.
Isn't it the folks that are on Hollingsworth headed south?
That is correct. Hollingsworth is a through route. The other portions of the intersection have yield signs in some cases and stop signs in others. So that's something we can look at too. Me driving, going through that intersection, I could see in all directions. So I don't know if the issue is people coming through that intersection, or in some cases where somebody went into the other lane in that curve as they're heading. I'm not sure. I haven't heard that specific one until yesterday. The gentleman stated to Commissioner Miller that he did not report it. So we have I would have to talk to the gentleman to get the specifics. The one other accident that we had, that was actually a failing to yield situation, not specifically associated with a site issue. So that individual was cited because he didn't do what he was required to do by the signs that are out there.
I don't know how you can have an accident there without somebody failing to follow the roadway signage.
And I'd like to maybe just be able to sit down in front of a map with Commissioner Miller and get it, because certainly we want to do whatever is necessary to make every intersection safe, and in some cases it may require the county making certain decisions, and those are things that we can look at and bring to the board to get some direction moving forward on that area. But right now, the corn from a transportation standpoint and a transportation safety standpoint is not creating a site issue from the standpoint of what we can control. He's outside of the county right of way in that curve, and in a certain distance through that curve, so we can.
My sense is that these curves that we have were added, pre-existed the other roads that were tied into them.
Correct.
And I'm not a traffic engineer, but you might think about whether or not in the big picture it makes more sense just to eliminate that curve.
Yes.
We vacated it 1 year.
What we did was the board chose to go with a temporary detour during the growing season.
I remember that, and that's why I'm saying we didn't have any issues once we did that. And unless it makes the traffic process safer, I'm willing to give up a minuscule amount of efficiency if in fact it's creating a hazard. And it's a little different when you come around that curve and you've got the right of way, because you feel like you're merging in to that northbound Hollingsworth. So I can see how people might get confused, but bottom line is weigh the two. If we're having accidents there, maybe that curve just needs to go away.
I agree, and I appreciate Commissioner Miller bringing that.
And I'll give you 3 more names of people that had near hits there.
I mean, certainly we love to hear that from the public, and it's unfortunate that they either don't feel comfortable calling us direct, because we appreciate. I mean, there are eyes and ears out there, and we certainly want to do things better. And I agree with Commissioner Peck that these types of intersections are not ideal, and we have quite a few of them. And Hollingsworth is that is the main route, and so bringing them into a stop condition now and making those
seems to be a perennial problem.
So
if it doesn't make the traffic safer, then we really need to look at
a couple ways, maybe put down a 35. Of course, that doesn't stop people because the trucks appreciate that curve because they don't have to come to the intersection, stop, and turn. And that's where some of the problem is. As the bank lowered at an angle, as the trucks go, they may crowd into the center more possibly. But these were two pickups, and that could have been the issue. That's the way I understood it, is as you come out of that corner going straight, and he's coming around the corner, there's a dead spot there.
Yeah, I mean, the curve itself has signs on it for the curve. It's not a 55 mile an hour, 50 mile an hour curve. That's why we have the appropriate signs. The speed limit for that road is still that, so they're really just, warning signs for the people, and it is slower than that, and it's something we can look at. Those curves in and of themselves are typically not designed to today's speeds that everybody's traveling, and that's something that when we're doing new construction or even looking at reconstructing areas that we certainly look at. But to do that requires, on curves like this, an incredible amount of right-of-way. And in an agricultural community, when you're acquiring right-of-way, you're providing incredible impacts to their circles and farming.
Matt, is there another place in a rural county that has the frequency of accidents that we're seeing here?
Well,
anything that comes to mind?
We have accidents. Intersections are some of the primary accidents that we have. So I don't know. Based on the numbers that have been reported, this is not a very high number of accidents compared to other areas in the county.
Okay. Well, that's something to look at, certainly. I mean, it doesn't make sense to incur the cost of taking out something that trucks like if it's not going to improve safety. So I just wanted to clarify my earlier comment. But the other thing I'd point out is that if it's big trucks hauling commodities that like these curves, right, then it would seem logical to increase the potential for a passenger vehicle large truck incident too.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. We target zero by 2030 and trying to cut down on fatality serious accidents on all roads in the state of Washington. We're looking at every reported accident that comes in and certainly have benefited from some of the funding that's been available and will continue to benefit from some of the federal and state funding. So that's certainly an area that we're looking at and we'll continue to look at, and there's probably a good possibility that we'll see some funding to help us out in those areas.
Now, in your early years there at Public Works, wasn't there a push to eliminate intersections with just a yield onto another road?
Yes.
Come to a T, stop to a T, and what brings to mind is Lind Road and Hoover Road.
Yeah.
That used to be a curve off of Hoover going west that would just yield onto Lind Road, and that intersection was changed to a T where that Hoover had to come to a stop. And
yes,
that was kind of a push 20 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, and we took care of a lot of them, and what the chairman is talking about is where we actually had T intersections, but they were more Y type, where people were flying through them. It didn't come in at a 90-degree. People would turn off of them, and they could still turn left if they wanted to. So it was kind of almost like a three-legged intersection, and we've gotten rid of those.
Kind of like 17 up by the slide.
Yeah. Yeah. So
that's a weird intersection.
Yes,
Where
it
this
is.
one?
Just south of the slide.
On
170, you mean?
Yeah, 170.
Yeah, that's what I said 17. I meant 170.
Yeah. And when I was talking to Commissioner Miller, we have in the past acquired right-of-way. In this case, I think it would be a considerable amount of right-of-way. It would have a considerable impact to the farming operations out there to change that curve. And so, but we do have options, and certainly we're looking at all those right now, and hope to report something to the board for further direction.
All right. Still fighting with FEMA? Yeah.
Not so much fighting with FEMA. What had happened is FEMA put a moratorium on reimbursements for repairs. They still were going to pay for what they call Class A and Class B, which is all of the work that was done during the flooding event, but we're not going to take care of any of the cost at this point for the repairs after the event, which is a huge impact on us. The numbers that we saw, we looked to give reimbursed for about $350,000 of approximately $4 million. So there's a huge gap in there, and that's due to the hurricanes that we saw in Texas and of course Puerto Rico and throughout the southern part of the United States. What we've kind of have heard a change in now that the money, that there has been additional monies dedicated to all of the events, and so there may be, that moratorium may not last as long as we were originally told, and we can start, but we are almost completed with supplying FEMA with every bit of our cost, and that's been a huge, I mean, they wanted every photo needed to have, lat and longs tied to them, and so we had a lot of guys like me that go out there and taking pictures from my phone, and then as I'm out there and then downloading them, and I don't have my GPS turned on for my photos. That created problems that needed to be fixed. So there was lots of hurdles that we had to overcome that we learned from, and we won't make that mistake again. We're going to make appropriate changes internally to make sure that, but that's kind of where it's going. FEMA, without directly saying so, probably reading, I'm not always best at reading between the lines. My wife can vouch for that. But it almost appeared like their job was really to try to find ways not to reimburse us, like it's our fault. You had a culvert blowout. That's because you didn't clean it. You had to prove to us that you maintained it and kept it clean. So they didn't go as far as saying that, but certainly they put a lot of pressure on us to prove that these things did happen, and they didn't happen because we weren't doing our appropriate maintenance of our road system and the facility. So, which is fair, but it certainly has put a lot of extra work and stress on staff to really go out and get everything they needed. And like I said, from the last time we had an event and dealt with FEMA, that's a huge change from 2006 in how they operated to 2017. Because in 2006, it seems like they just wrote a check and it was a done deal, and that's just not the case anymore. So we learn from it. Next time we'll be prepared and hope they don't change. Don't do major changes by the next event.
So Matt, are you saying that after the incident, if we had been careless in our evaluation of our roads, if we had opened roads prematurely, caused further damage, that FEMA might have refused to pay for the repairs?
I didn't say that, but that was certainly.
Would you agree with that assessment?
I won't.
We would increase our risk of not getting reimbursed if we hadn't taken care of our roads?
That's correct.
Okay. Just curious.
That's correct. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Matt. Anything else? Hearing nothing.
Thank you.
Hearing nothing else for the good of the board, we are adjourned. Thank you.